Mighty peculiar.
Hey guys.
Oh,
yeah. What's up, Doug?
Yeah, what's up?
Did you know that birds are dying in Arkansas because of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
Oh, man.
No, didn't know that.
Asshole birds.
Yeah. Talk about wanting attention for themselves. Don't make the news about you, birds.
It's a bunch of bull guano.
Yeah, agreed. But you know what? I don't want to be a one-upper, but I want to be a one-upper.
All right, let's go. What do you got?
Did you know that the earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan a couple years ago was caused by the belief in Shintoism and the emperor's pagan sexual intercourse with the sun goddess?
Huh. My Lord, is the sun goddess named Stormy?
Yes, the Japanese sun goddess is named Stormy.
Mighty peculiar.
I hate to be that guy at the party, but I got something that maybe is crazier than what you both just said. I know it's pretty nuts. Do you know there's a Senate candidate here in Virginia named Hung Kao, had an interview with the NAR person, New Apostolic Reformation minister, and a Christian Nationalist named Sean Fucht. And Hung and Fox were talking, and Hung said that he's actually running for Senate because he doesn't want Virginia to become like California and all the witchcraft and the Wiccans that are there.
You know I have to cut out everything you just said, right?
It's just their names. Hello, everybody. Denver Riggleman here. Another week of insanity and facts. No fiction. But I'm here with my good friend, Matt Anderson. And Matt, what do we have on the table for today?
Oh, man. Okay, so today we are talking fake prophets seeking real profits. And
my favorite topic.
That is a favorite thing. Specifically, we are talking about NAR, which Denver, that stands for?
The New Apostolic Reformation.
Okay, you'll never hear me try and say that because I can't, so NAR it is. But before we get into all that, let's do the usual. We need you to like, subscribe, turn on notifications on YouTube, and then on anywhere you are listening to this just the podcast version, please, rate, review, do any of that stuff. Because if you don't, we're going to send Paula White to your house, and she is going to scream, pray in your ear while you're trying to sleep. That's not going to be fun. No one wants that.
Speaking in tongues from Paula White is different from speaking in tongues on prom night. You know what I mean? Those are two very different things.
Denver is coming out strong on this one.
I've had enough. But no, it's this should be an exciting time. I'm very excited about it and what we're going to talk about. And I can't wait to hear your history of the NAR. I do want to apologize up front. I almost believe, Matt, that we probably need 3 or 4 episodes with the NAR, the UIP, Ziklag, Unified in Purpose, with the Seven Mountains Dominionism, and with all the splinter groups and the other groups that control it. I think I know a little bit about this subject. So for all of those open source intelligence researchers out there who know the NAR very, very well, I'm pretty good with it. But, a lot of my knowledge did come from open source intelligence researchers on Twitter or other platforms.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people put a lot of trust and faith in me to give them that, to give me that data. The other thing, too, is that, seeing the Meadows text messages in the book that I wrote, The Breach, and the data that I have, I think by merging that together, I think this show will give a pretty good perspective on Christian nationalism, the New Apostolic Reformation, and as you said, prophets making profits, which is a subject that's very dear to me.
Right. As you said, there's so many different avenues and different paths that you can take in talking about this, a lot of them steeped in a lot of religious history and different versions of Christianity. It's all relevant, but it's also all kind of distracting. because really, and let's just get right to it, NAR came really about in 1996. Coincidentally, speaking of last week's episode, was also the year in which prompted you to say it was like a Christian nationalist jailbreak.
It's amazing that you brought that up, and that's part of what you're doing by interleaving, our episodes. And, we had talked to Doug about almost a timeline of our episodes, but when you're talking about the new Apostolic Reformation, you're talking about the way I was raised, which a lot of people know now based on my book, The Breach, and based on the fact I was raised Latter-day Saints. My grandparents were Southern Baptist. I was always sort of wrapped in the spiritual warfare blanket.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that's so exciting, that you were able to connect what I was talking about with the Christian National jailbreak, the Christian nationalism jailbreak in the mid-1990s to what's happening today. It's funny. You did some incredible background work on Pat Buchanan, some of those individuals when you're talking about between 92 and 96. I actually had an individual ask me the other day, like, hey, actually it was yesterday at the distillery, which, I have a lot of great discussions. The individual asked me, he said, hey, did this really start with, when you're talking about Christian nationalism, did it start with the Tea Party? Did it start in the late 200-aughts, right? 2007, 2008? I said, no, it started in 92. And we had an incredible discussion from Buchanan onward. And again, I think that's why this show is so valuable, is that we do approach it from trying to explain it from the ground up without being too technical initially. But I do think we probably need one more or two more on Christian nationalism and all the groups that are interleaved. But I think that this is going to be absolutely awesome based on what I know you've done, especially your incredible artwork that you showed me that you're going to be presenting. So
I'm so glad
I'm ready for
that will be revealed at a very key moment.
Yes.
So as I said, 1996 seems to be kind of the key year, specifically with a guy named C. Peter Wagner, which is not a sentence, it's a name. He's considered, I guess, the founder of NAR. It also seems like he just kind of compiled like different ideas that were floating around in the Christian movement, trying to modernize it, but making it more relevant to modern society by almost reintroducing stuff that seemingly on the face of it would make it less relevant to modern society.
Did he identify as a prophet? I'm asking, and people love that we do this because Matt will bring up things that are beyond, even before the stuff that I know. So did he self-identify as a prophet, or somebody that had some kind of, maybe he had some kind of enlightenment gene that allowed him to do these type of things?
He did, but kind of weirdly after the fact. And it's almost one of the most infuriating and predictable parts about him. So what he does, again, he kind of gathers up all this stuff, right? But what seems to be in the air that like the people that want to follow something like NAR are missing is some of the more magic-y elements of the Bible. You just mentioned prophets and prophecy, and then apostles in general being not limited to a certain number, which is kind of from my, albeit little limited understanding, there was, a handful. So
two hands and a couple toes.
Exactly. Yep. So what he wanted to do was basically reintroduce that. And when you reintroduce apostles and prophets and take away, that whole need for, I don't know, experience, education, practice, any kind of, official status. So I'm really calling it the do your own research of the church world is what he has done. Why listen to the vaccine scientists when I can just be a vaccine scientist because I read something? That's NAR with religion. You want to be a prophet? Sure, go for it. You don't feel like you're a prophet, but you want to be an apostle? Hey, why not? That's their mentality. The structure is very loose intentionally. The power is deceptively spread out. Like that's supposed to be part of the appeal, right? If you feel moved or spoken to by God or some higher power, that shouldn't be shunned. That should be embraced. You can just do that and you can be accepted.
Well, my question is, how many people can actually have that type of gift? I mean, when you're talking about the gift of prophecy, I think there's a couple things that you run into if everybody has the gift of prophecy, right? What happens when something's inconsistent, as you mentioned?
Doesn't matter.
Right? For example, you know, when you have individuals who say Trump is going to be reinstalled, you know, as you know, president at some specific date, whether you're talking about the Julie Greens, who's one of the MAGA, you know, prophets, or when you're talking about Paul Smith, who's, you know, obviously Trump's, you know, spiritual advisor, or you're talking about Lance Wallnau, or you're talking about some of these other individuals, right, that identify as prophets or identify as having some direct link to the supernatural. I wonder how they, if everybody has that kind of gift, I wonder how they broker that message, right, based on those gifts.
You know, I think you're thinking about it more than they did. How many people can be prophets? As many as there are in the world, apparently, because so again, loose structure is a feature, not a bug. So the less you can pin down on them is kind of good, because one of the things they want to do is encourage people to join their movement. So they're going to try and, like, not initially, at least, put all the cool stuff behind the paywall, right? Like they want it all up front. Like, if you want to be magic, you can be magic. You want to meet with angels and hang out with angels? You can meet and hang out with angels.
So it's interesting. So 1996.
Yeah.
Right. You have say his name one more time for the listening audience.
Peter Wagner. Don't worry, it sounds like a sentence.
Yeah. So you got
Peter Wagner, C Spot Run.
So we got Mr. C Peter.
Yep.
So we got C Peter in 96. My guess is he probably had a lot of writings. I'm not quite sure if
it was, you know, incredibly prolific all throughout his career. He wrote a couple books about this, but it seemed like he finally synthesized NAR as a concept in 1999 in a book called Churchquake,
which I love. Right, Churchquake is fantastic.
Okay, let's talk about what NAR actually believes, because again, this is going to it can get a little weedsy, but we're going to just stick to a very streamlined version. So first and foremost, and this is very convenient, understanding that, like, one, there's lack of structure intentionally, and they put the focus on apostles and prophets as their kind of figureheads, guides, whatever. They very conveniently claim that prophets and apostles alone, underline that, alone, have the power and authority to execute God's plans on earth.
So there's definitely a chain of command.
Yes, it's, again, keep in mind now we're in little contradictory terms, right? Because the structure is very loose, intentionally, right. But if you're the only people you can listen to are apostles and prophets, right? Meaning them, because they're the only ones that actually acknowledge modern day apostles and prophets, because other variations of Christianity have those either removed or cast completely in historical, context, right? So basically what they're trying to just say here is everything else sucks. Just listen to us.
Go ahead. I love this. Keep going, because I have that experience in my life, but I want you to keep going because this is amazing. Keep going.
So, and now we're going to get to specifically, they believe in something called dominionism. And there's a very lengthier definition, but for NAR's purposes, the specific version of dominionism that they're going to believe in is that Earth is currently controlled by Satan and his minions. And by minions, I basically mean Democrats / Democrats.
Or rhinos.
Or rhinos.
Right. Or maybe some fiercely independent individuals, right? Which are probably listening to this program.
By minions, it's just insert whoever annoys them here is basically it. So Satan is completely in control of the world right now. And the only way we can get control back for God and for the good is to engage in spiritual warfare. So defeating Satan is a huge and kind of abstract goal, right? So they believe Satan's in control and they need to fight it. So how do you communicate that to people? Like, how do you get them? How do you convey to your hopefully growing audience that Satan is completely in control right now? And what is it that you need to accomplish in order to defeat him? Well, in this case, they've got what they are calling the 7 Mountains Mandate. And if you bear with me for 1 second, I will bring up a little visual aid that my son helped me with. And we'll put this in the episode. So what we've got are 7 mountains here, all lovingly illustrated. And each mountain has a title. So we've got family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, government. Okay, so what that means is Satan is currently controlling all of those. So you know what? If you think you're in control of your business, Denver, no. It's Satan. Satan's got your distillery, not you.
Why do I feel like the church lady should be part of this podcast or part of this broadcast today?
I know. I kind of feel her in the room, actually. With me. So basically, what each mountain is something that needs to be conquered and wrestled away from the grasp of Satan. So for NAR, their goal and what their measurement of success is in somehow controlling media, controlling business, controlling government. Is this starting to sound really creepy? Because it's really creepy. Like, the point is, they think Satan's in control, and really what they want is them to be in control.
Sounds like a theocratic government to me. And
yeah,
you got to remember, I have a pretty extensive terrorism background. So when you're talking about Islamic extremism, right, when you're talking about what I went through as far as an intelligence analyst between 99 and 2003 specifically, and as you know, I deployed initially in 9/11. When you're talking about the 7 mountains and controlling all aspects, when you're talking about government, when you're talking about business, when you're talking about education, let's look at government and education right now. I mean, that controlling those factors, right, or trying to get your arms around that as far as from a theological standpoint, based on a modern day prophet, it sounds very, very threatening, I think, to people that value freedom of thought over thought that is specifically drilled into you based on religious beliefs from theocratic leaders.
Right. Well, exactly. And that's the thing is what I said about like how they're almost like disarmingly describing this as like an everyman's movement. Like, you know, you can join in like and be an important part of the church, not just a member of the flock, you know, but like play an active role. That's because, and this, well, I guess, well, really simply, it's because they need you for their army is what they're referring to it as. Their spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare army. And it sounds like that they're almost a super spreader event for a new satanic panic that we've never seen before.
Yes.
Right? If you're talking about satanic portals, you're talking about the Roger Stones, you're talking about the speaking in tongues that we're seeing. We're talking about the Reawaken America tour with Mike Flynn. We're talking about Eric Trump showing up there. We're talking about the long list of prophets and personalities that show up for these events. You're talking about, UIP, Ziklag, which is a huge funder of much of this, which is United in Purpose. And so you almost have this umbrella event where you have a new religious almost section, another portion of Christianity that has its own rule book, has its own chain of command, has its own, I would say, ability to metastasize the satanic panic, right? Has a plan to control sectors of the United States in some way. Yep. When you put that all together, the jailbreak in 92 to 96 of Christian nationalism looks like a pimple on a hog's ass compared to what we're seeing right now with the new Apostolic Reformation.
Yes, 100%. And actually, so let's think about like, we kind of just started talking about, metastasizing, right? Well, what they would call that, so you call it metastasizing, they call it the church growth movement.
Well, it's proselytizing, metastasizing and proselytizing, which rhymes, which should be a song, metastasizing and proselytizing. And so,
make a note of that, Doug. Okay, this might be, I have a lot of like, I actually almost made like a list of my 5 favorite things I've learned this past week about NAR, because while it's a very serious subject, there is some just decidedly like hilarious parts of it.
I would love to hear them, honestly, if you want to do it. You don't have to, Matt, but I think people, based on what you're learning and based on the fact that I forced you into a NAR education system, right, when we did this, I'd love to hear it if you don't want to. If you're like, Den, let's just keep going because there's so much. But if there are a few things that really shocked you, I'd love to hear them, Matt. I think that would be really nice to hear.
You know what would be funny is actually if we almost did that in just a few minutes, because I've got some plans.
Oh, you got plans.
I've got plans. I've gone full NAR at this point.
You devil, you.
So let's talk about the church growth movement for a second.
Okay, I'm ready.
So it's basically self-explanatory. They are trying to grow their church, right?
Right.
But they are doing it in a distinctly invasion of the body snatchers style, where it's like they are just trying to grab existing churches and movements and just fold them into theirs until, and this is their term, they form a one world church.
That's their term, one world church.
That's their goal. So if let's backtrack for 1 second and just clarify. So Satan is in control of the 7 mountains, and now we as NAR need to wrest control back. So first order business, church growth movement, right? Because this is where we're gaining our army. This is our troops, right? And so ultimately to found a one world church, which, like I said, privately when talking to you, is it kind of sounds suspiciously like the one world government that lots of people really are fearing is going to happen, the black helicopters and whatnot that we've discussed. But for them, this is 100% awesome, like totally great one world church, which to their credit will be governed by an independent third party and, be totally free and fair. I'm just kidding. It'll be governed by them, just them and only them.
Just them. It's funny. On November 5th of 2020, Ivanka wrote to Mark Meadows in the text messages.
Oh, wait, hold on. Would this be from the Mark Meadows text messages that you have
from
gotten?
my book, The Breach, right? Said, you are all warriors of epic proportions. Keep the faith and the fight. November 5th, 2020. As you're going through here, and some of the things that I have, right, is that as you're talking about Seven Mountains Dominionism, you're talking about the NAR, as I bring up the UIP, United in Purpose. What I hope people take from this is they need to look this up. They need to see exactly what is happening. And there's some amazing open source intelligence researchers like on X or Twitter, or as I call it, Shitbird, XHITBIRD. I think that you need to add Vision Surreal. There's just a lot of people up there that you need to look at when you're talking about how they're funded and how they come together. But the best thing is to watch them for yourselves. Let them self-identify to you. So as we're going forward in this, the reason I just threw that in there, as you're talking about belief systems, is that the God is going to save us thread, and people that are members of this movement are littered throughout the Mark Meadows text messages. So as we're going forward, I want people to go back and look at the book, The Breach. I'm not trying to sell it. I don't care if you get the library. But also, I want you to go to the Talking Points memo, TPM, and look at Hunter Walker, my co-author, his article on the interthreads, right, or the threads of the Mark Meadows text messages and everything that's actually in there as far as doing word searches on God, armies, spiritual warfare, evil, devil, Biden crime family, especially the interaction between Jenny and Mark Meadows, which was really about a religious sort of uprising that needed to happen. So I know I'm jumping in at this point, but the thing is that there is glue to this. Your research, when you're talking about the fact that there is a new, I would say, there's a new stovepipe, right? There's a new column of Christianity.
Sorry, hold on. That was a fly. It was definitely Satan sent.
I mean, after my camera falling and the fly on the camera.
I was wishing it wouldn't do that. Okay.
No, that was Mike Pence. He sent that fly. And I am so done with this. But anyway, I just...
Okay. Doug, we're keeping that all in.
That is so wonderful. But I think that I think what we have here is the glue that is together here is a new religion that has a specific chain of command that's based on a theocratic way forward that seems to be metastasizing or a super spreader for the satanic panic. Also has its own biblical translation, I believe.
Oh, yes, it does.
Right?
Yes, the Passion Translation, as it is known, which they do not lead up. They're not upfront about it being a NAR-friendly translation. That is one of those fun little things that they just lure people in. Like, this is a new accessible translation, specifically that it is meant to be easy to read. Sometimes it is paraphrasing the Bible in order to just speed the process of reading it up along. But also, funny enough, it is retroactively changing language in order to make it seem like there are things from the Bible that support NAR's worldview and actions. So
to hell with the King James translation.
This is going to be a through line. We're going to get to this too in a second.
Go ahead, sir. I apologize about the text message. You know, every single text message, I've read them so many times.
Yeah.
That it actually, you told me, hey, you know, maybe something triggers. I hate that word trigger. It's not really trigger.
I'm trying to take it back.
For me, the word is excitement and warning.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It's excitement and warning based on my background and what happened to me, not only after I officiated the same-sex wedding. I didn't understand it was not just QAnon, but it was also NAR or Seven Mountain Dominionists that came after me pretty hard.
Yeah.
And that amazing connection between January 6th and the new Apostolic Reformation and Christian Dominionists. That's what I want people to get. As Matt is talking, I'm sure we have very smart listeners. I think they're starting to put that glue together because this is a beginner sort of educational push on the NAR.
Yes.
But what Matt has done is showing you that this is something like other religions, newer religions, like LDS, like I was raised, really came up from a self-prescribed prophet with a new biblical translation that's pushing something that sounds eerily similar to what a theocratic society, even based on Islamic extremism, would do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And actually, you know, to just pick up that thread for a second, whether fair or not, there have been numerous groups that have called NAR America's Taliban because of their, you know, insistence on this very particular read or interpretation of religion, and coupling that with spiritual warfare, the idea that there is, you know, a confrontation that needs to be had, and that they are the army to see that confrontation through. Now, and so let's talk about spiritual warfare for a second. Since Ivanka brought it up, who are we to question her? So, as we said, the church growth movement is where they get their army, right? That's them amassing the army. So now, how do you fight Satan and get the 7 mountains back? Well, that's spiritual warfare. And this is an area where I'm having a kind of a hard time totally envisioning what they mean, but I'm going to tell you what it is that they say they're doing, and then we'll kind of see what we get from there. So spiritual warfare has 3 levels.
Okay, I'm ready.
Level number 1, ground level. And that is basically defined as person-to-person prayer. So that's probably like what you think of in like just any kind of church normal sense, right? It's person-to-person, and it's, you know, prayer, you know, praying for someone, right?
Yes.
Level 2 is the occult level. Now, this is where I start not totally understanding what they're going to do, because that's basically beating up demons or Democrats. But yeah, so I think it's just more praying, because unless this is a cast yourself in a role-playing game and, like, you know, you're a wizard, you know, casting the dark, whatever. So ground level, occult level. Level 3 is the strategic / cosmic level. This one is the one that I am having so much of difficult time wrapping my head around, because basically what they say is this is the level where you bind and bring down the powers that are controlling, like, the government and everything. So I think what they mean is this is when you are a Ghostbuster and you've got the proton pack, and you've got Satan or one of his minions in the stream, and they're caught, and you're trying to get them into the trap. And so it's that process that you see with Slimer when they're all trying to lower him, but he's fighting and they're trying to lower him, and then he's finally in the trap.
Well, I mean, would Slimer be indicative of Democratic politicians or rhinos? And the other thing too is that when you're talking about the cosmic government or the third level of spiritual warfare, I would also submit that that's also money driven. So I think, as we're going in this, when you're talking about the cosmic level or the government level of spiritual warfare, you're talking about who conducts that spiritual warfare. Speaking in tongues, Reawaken American, Greg Locke, right? The crazy pastor, all these individuals. And if you look at the names, everybody can go and look at the names. Wikipedia does pretty well. But again, look up on Twitter, right? Look up some of the open source intelligence researchers under New Apostolic Reformation and go watch the videos for yourself. They actually provide the proof of what people are saying. But let's talk about me.
Let's talk about Denver.
I was in the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
Right? Where'd the Freedom Caucus meet? At the Conservative Partnership Institute, right? Over next to the Capitol.
Yeah.
Now they have their own media center. They're very well funded. The UIP, Unified Purpose, which supports the NAR, and there's a lot of money that funnels through these groups back and forth, the NAR and the Seven Mountain Dominionists and pastors and preachers and Reawaken America Tour and Mike Flynn and Mike Lindell and the Allied Security Operations Group, the ASOG, which was a huge part, right, of the Antrim County ballot investigation, the fake cyber investigations. All this is linked. The CPI, Conservative Partnership Institute, which is where the Freedom Caucus meets, where all of the most far-right individuals go, where Sidney Powell met with members of Congress and Mike Lee, $600,000 from the UIP. Part of that cosmic government line is the funding lines from the very rich, very religious, right, that actually are funding these races from the local, state, and federal level. Also judiciary, like Leonard Leo.
Yes.
All of this, and I know that's why I said we need multiple parts, because this is so big.
Yeah.
But the fact that you gave the history of the NAR, right, and the fact that we're talking about a new sect of Christianity that erupts from a self-proclaimed prophet. I know I'm being redundant, but people need to understand that glue is the fact is they're fighting Satan and the globalists, being the anti-Semites, obviously, on the globalist side.
Right.
And the deep state, which are Democrats, rhinos, independents that aren't aligned with the Christian way of thinking or the NAR way of thinking. Yeah. And the fact is they actually have a way to consolidate power through their Seven Mountains strategy.
Right. You know where we need to go next?
Where do we need to go?
IHOP.
I am hungry. I could use some pancakes.
You may be waiting a while, because we are not going to the International House of Pancakes. We are going to the International House of Prayer.
Lord, I'm asking for the college students and the college campuses here in Kansas City. I'm asking, Lord, for ones in our spiritual family, for IHOP youth students, for the One Thing interns, God. I'm asking that you would give these ones grace for wholehearted love for Jesus, God. Would you give them grace upon grace to pursue you in this season, in Jesus' name?
Yes, God, I just ask that you would meet college students across America and the nations, that you would break into their hearts and they would know who you are.
Lord God, I ask that you would bring through the revival on college campuses. Lord Jesus, I pray for the college campuses, Lord. I pray that we would just create an atmosphere that invites you in, Lord.
Father, we say that your son is worthy of the young people in this generation. We ask, would you give him millions of young people, hearts alive in wholehearted love.
Father, I ask that you would raise up shepherds according to your heart in Jesus' name.
Lord, I pray for wisdom and revelation in their hearts and in their minds.
That was the IHOP that we are currently attending.
Now that's a party.
That is a party.
I tell you, that's a party. That's a party. Interestingly, what they were praying about, it's incredible to me. But please go on about IHOP.
So why are we there, and what does this have to do with NAR? You may be asking yourself.
I think a lot. I don't know now.
Believe me, not 6 days ago, I think I was going mad trying to figure out why the term IHOP kept coming up without any explanation when I was reading about NAR. So the International House of Prayer is in St. Louis, Missouri, right?
Okay.
It's about September 18th, 1999.
So it's not in Illinois?
It is not in Illinois,
Matt. Is this
not in Illinois? I know, but we're
crazy
so
ass
close.
people. Oh, I'm sorry. That's aren't in Illinois. I apologize.
Yeah, we've done a lot of damage to Illinois on this. Well, Illinois did a lot of damage to itself. We were just talking about it.
Well, Missouri has huge Mormon history, as you know.
Well, that might make a lot of sense for what we just saw because
Yes.
So the International House of Prayer has been operating like that since September 1999, right?
Wow.
And that particular room that you saw in the video is a 24/7, 365-day a year continuous prayer room.
That's pretty amazing.
And they got a live feed. So like right now, you could go to their website and just check in on what they're praying about because they need to pray about lots of stuff to fill time. We happened to catch a little live bit of them praying for college campuses because, school's about to start.
Well, also, I mean, you got the woke administrators and liberal administrators on college campuses. So
very true.
Right. So I think maybe, there's some seriousness. Oh, man, I can't even say this with a straight face.
No. Yep. You're right.
But I think but I do understand. Remember when I said that, God, should I make this comparison? I'm going to do it.
Yeah. We should encourage this.
Remember when I said crazy has more energy than sanity?
Yeah.
I do believe that your belief in a direct supernatural link, and that you can use a supernatural entity and the power of specific individuals who act as mediators to change your life does give you, I think, more energy than somebody who maybe doesn't have that belief. And I'm saying this with a smile if people are on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that all religious people are crazy. I'm not saying that, even though, because, by the way, I believe that religious liberty is one of the great things this country is founded on. But I will say that there seems to be, since the Christian nationalism jailbreak, and it seems to me that, like you said, and like we've always said, that inconsistency is a feature, not a bug. I would say that that's sort of on the edge, supernatural, maybe on the edge of crazy energy is also a feature, not a bug. And it's very difficult for people to keep up with that energy if you don't believe that there's something over your life that's guiding every second of it.
Sure. And you know what? I know for a fact that this is not, because one of the things I was worried about going into this episode was, were we going to kind of, once you dip your toe into talking about religion, it's a whole other level of potential pitfalls than just talking about very specific belief in UFOs and all that stuff. The thing that made me finally kind of feel relaxed about it is you just said religious liberty is one of the great things about this country. You know who doesn't believe in religious liberty is NAR. So
exactly. That's
I have no problem in this sense, actually calling them out specifically. So now where we're going to bring, let's see, let's not get we're not going to get pancakes. We're just going to get preached at. But the reason why I bring up IHOP, right, is this is an example of the church growth movement that we talked about kind of in action, right? So the guy that founds IHOP is a guy named Mike Bickle, which is his name is perfect because he looks like a Bickle, is the way I said it.
I love it. But you should look like your name, right?
If he looks like your name,
he's a Bickle.
He's a Bickle. He's a 100% a Bickle. So he was not part of NAR. He actually had this whole other thing called the Kansas City Prophets, which believed in
Is that a roller derby team?
It really sounds like a roller derby thing.
Is that? I think Doug used to skate for the Kansas City Prophets.
You know what?
I'm pretty sure
he will be able to speak for himself on that one, and I look forward to his answer.
That's right.
So the Kansas City Prophets predated NAR. They were their own kind of, but they were playing around on the edges of this, right? They were also kind of interested in bringing back the idea of the apostles and prophets. They themselves were prophesizing something about a new breed of super prophets were to arrive on earth, which whole other thing that I'm wondering, it's something extraterrestrial. The point is, so while Bickle is going around, doing that, NAR pops up and they join forces. So church growth movement in effect. It takes this pre-existing guy that has his own set of beliefs and folds them in. And one other element about NAR that I think is very important to point out is they have some temerity. Like they have balls. They have audacity. How about that? Try to any one of those words you want. Something about their beliefs is they don't actually think that the scripture is good enough. It's not like you can be better than it. They don't really think much about the idea of Jesus sacrificing for his sins. They think that's kind of like amateur. Because again, keep in mind, they are casting themselves as prophets and apostles. So they need to be the main characters of this story, right?
Of course they do. Of course they do. It's, Joseph Smith, Mormons, right? The apostles then. The fact that, he had the Doctrine and Covenants and he used the Urim and Thummim to actually translate the gold plates. And the fact is that was the new religion, right? Remember, he prayed in the grove and said, no religion is true. Which one is true, right? And then he had bespoke prophecy, right? That was specific to the one true church. And, only the LDS religion can attain the celestial kingdom and become gods themselves. So when you're talking about NAR, listen, I feel like I'm letting you down a little bit, Matt, because there's so much in my head, as you know, about all of this.
Yeah.
I wish I had almost like a laser beam of knowledge where I could show you everything that happened to me while I was on the trail. Being called the general of the sodomite armies, the tool of the Antichrist, the spawn of Satan, a secret Jew, right? In the pejorative, obviously, and then a secret Democrat, which is the worst thing you can be called in the world if you're a Republican, is a secret Democrat. But the fact that people came up and said God had forsaken me, or that I wasn't following the religious teachings, which happened to me with my family too, as you're well aware, people have read the book. What you're saying to me is so disturbing because what you're talking about is an instantiation of this "we are the one true way" starting in 96 with C. Peter, right? And moving forward now to where you have NAR becoming a conspiracy or a religious sticky bomb, where they're ingesting all of these other religions into this new apostolic movement, and where it's actually a plan or a governmental plan with business, government, education, entertainment, the seven mountains as we go across the spectrum. They actually have a strategic plan to take over based on their belief system. You're exactly right. Coming full circle to you. That is not freedom of religion.
No,
that is a theocratic way of looking at things.
That is 100% a theocratic way. And so what did you said, what was the Joseph Smith thing? It was
the Urim and Thummim? Or when
but
what he used that was like a device to translate the gold plates that he found under a tree in Palmyra or whatever.
And what were his teachings? You said they were
the teachings were new. It meant that whatever him as a living prophet, self-identified, he changed certain things of the Trinity. He changed, the word of wisdom. There were things that came down. The Doctrine and Covenants were his own personal prophecies. The Book of Mormon, which came from the prophet Mormon. Well, actually, he's the one who actually buried him. It was a compilation of books like the Bible that talked about, dark skin being evil, things like that, right? All of these things came about because of him. He was a living prophet who created a new religion or a new sect based on the fact that all the other teachings, even though they were applicable, they did not actually translate to the modern age and what we really needed to do to get back into the kingdom of heaven.
Oh, okay. So, because again, that sounds alarmingly similar to NAR, right? They have something that they like to call extra biblical interpretations. So,
EBIs.
So, if you want my number one favorite fact that I think is actually hilarious while also being dangerous about NAR, it's their It's kind of two things: extra biblical teachings, which I sum up as, why read the Bible when you can dream the Bible? So, and what that means is they put way more stock into their prophets' dreams and other thoughts about the Bible than they do about the actual text.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
It's well, my God, have we come full circle? And I'm sure you have some smart listeners.
Here, hold on, because there's one more level here, and I think this is also going to tell you.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, if extra biblical is like their basic, I guess, theory, like how the way they would describe their approach to teaching the Bible is extra biblical. Well, how about this? So, say you want to be a prophet, or you think you might be, and you're trying to figure out like what, like, is God speaking to you? Yeah, chances are yes. So like if you're hearing a voice in your head, that's God speaking to you, or some angel speaking to you. And what they do is, instead of that being a cause for concern, or like, hey, maybe you need to go get checked by a medical professional to just make sure everything's okay, they would call that revealed teachings. And that's, of course they would. So that's their way of basically finding out who a prophet is, or other than just straight out self-identifying and self-anointing. Like, if you are hearing voices, that is not it's not out of, it does not break any kind of rule to say that God is speaking to you directly and frequently, or that you may take a day trip to heaven to hang out with angels. Like, that's all on the table here. Because again, let's kind of bring it back to the idea that they are casting themselves in leading roles in a big battle, right? So what movie has a big battle that also doesn't have like a scene with like one of the warriors or something sitting with one of their leaders and talking about the battle to come? That's what they're doing now.
They're getting ready for the apocalypse, my friend.
Yes, of course.
I guess I'm always stunned that now they believe that they can do anything in pursuit of that objective. Whether that's January 6th, right? The fact that $255 million was raised by the Trump campaign on Stop the Steal, which is really a biblical thing when you're talking about the deep state trying to steal the election, and how many NAR, UIP, Ziklag, and Seven Mountain Dominionists were involved, not only in the text messages, but also in the entire Stop the Steal movement. J6 was a religious movement. Let's just be honest about this, right? And when you're telling me these things, it seems like the money that they have pumped into this, whether it's, like I said earlier, into CPI or the Great Awakening movement, right? All the money that's transferring is also based on the fact that the NAR, UIP, Ziklag, Seven Mountains, Dominionist movement also believes in a prosperity gospel where money is okay, right? And, so all of this, again, is a new religion. It's a new way of looking at things. It's a new translation. It's living prophets. So I'm going to say something you said about making news. I'm going to submit to you there's no such thing as living prophets. Not only that, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if there's ever been prophets. I think you're looking at an ability. If you say you have a direct line to God, whether you're in any of the major religious systems, the money flows. Yeah. Because you can mine the ignorant and mine those who also believe that if they give enough and believe enough, they will also earn their way into a direct laser beam of light to the highest kingdoms of heaven. And with that, with everything that's happening today, I don't think we've been in a more dangerous time when it comes to what's happening. I mean, for instance, you're being attacked by flies right now. I am. Right. And I've had this drop over, but I think there hasn't been a more dangerous time. So I want to read something from my book and let you continue. You ready? Yeah. We should do something, Matt, where I read, all the text messages that have God and stuff that's been released publicly and in my book, which would be crazy. But this is actually when Mark Meadows was trying to distance himself from Sidney Powell, he was getting texts from Jenny Thomas. So a lot of people read The Breach know about this, but I think to bring in what you've been trying to teach and what we've been talking about, since I think we need 50 episodes for the new Apostolic Reformation. Right. But we did want to give a baseline. This might not be as funny as people have expected in the past, but when I read this to you, I think it's going to shock you a little. So here we go. This is Mark Meadows. I'm going to talk about him real quick. Then we're going to read a tweet. Then we're going to read a text from Jenny Thomas.
Okay.
Distancing himself and the president from Powell, this is Mark Meadows, is one moment in the text logs where it seemed like Meadows might have been a moderating influence. Might have been, by the way. It didn't stop Powell from introducing plans to overturn the election late into December 2020. There were also plenty of exchanges where Meadows almost drowned in the Kool-Aid. One November 24th conversation between Meadows and Jenny Thomas seemed to show he was a true believer in the great Trump tribulation. Now, you've heard Trump talk about retribution, Matt, and the tribulations, and people saying this is the end times.
Right.
Check this text out on November 24th.
Okay.
This is Jenny. The fracturing now. The stabbing in the back of anyone daring to still say there seemed to be fraud. All the R's congratulating Biden, said Thomas. His loyalists can't take this. It is so evil. Thank you for being in my choir then, too. This is a fight of good versus evil. Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs. Meadows replied, do not grow weary in well-doing. The fight continues. I have staked my career on it. Well, at least my time in D.C. on it. So again,
that's the nice little addition right there. Well,
she says, it is so evil. Thank you for being in my choir then too.
Yes.
Meadows says, this is a fight of good versus evil. Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs.
Yeah.
Listen, these are littered throughout the 2,319 text messages, not just Meadows with Jenny, but the invocation of God or the devil. One way or the other, the devil being attributed to the Democrats and the Biden campaign, good, and God being attributed to Trump and the people that are trying to help them with the Stop the Steal.
Right.
What we're looking at is we are looking at this bizarre, I think, over this almost this roof that's been put on top of Christianity that says the apocalypse is coming.
Yeah.
And whatever we do is justified. Right? The means justify the ends.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that when we're talking about the new Apostolic Reformation, you're talking about a new church, you're talking about a new translation of the Bible, you're talking about a massive money-making operation, you're talking about Reawaken American Tours, you're talking about Greg Locke, you're talking about prophets, you're talking about Julie Green, you're talking about the babbling bizarreness of Paula White, who is a member of the new Apostolic Reformation and Trump's spiritual advisor. People need to wake up. They need to understand that God is controlling the GOP. The G in GOP is God. And that God is specific to the belief systems of those who are controlling the party. This isn't some kind of benevolent Christianity or loving Christianity where, let people be and, have, sup with the publicans, right? And the women, that are in the oldest profession.
Right.
Right, which Jesus did. And I think it's that perversion that pisses me off. Listen, I told you there was no living prophets. There isn't. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. And I said that, it's really difficult for me now as I get older to think that there was anybody with that direct line. But when you're talking about people who believe it and the money lines of this, it's very difficult to stop.
Yeah.
There is much more to talk about. But the new Apostolic Reformation is something that I will humbly submit, we must fight. Yeah. And we must fight not on the grounds that religion is bad. We must fight that their religion is bad. That is a huge distinction. And that's just, that's why when I read if we could go through all the text at some point, and maybe we do that on a part 2, but we could actually break down the people that are involved in the NAR, in the text messages from the book, and what's happening in the real world today.
Yeah. No. Well, first of all, totally agree with the idea of taking this and making it a to be continued episode, but then focusing specifically, and this is a tease, focusing a lot on Mark Meadows' text messages. So please, let's just say that, yes, we're going to come back and do that next week. But to also now bring it around to what you were saying about like fighting the NAR, I agree. Because then again, this is not about whether or not, you believe or you don't, or it's not those kinds of dividing lines. They seem like something that believers and non-believers can kind of unite against. because their interpretation of it is destructive. They are casting one. If they win, they claim that they are going to just own everything, right? That's what they want. And so if you are a Catholic, they don't have room for you, like, unless you get on board with them. If you're an atheist, they don't have room for you unless, so there are certain people, and it's interesting that Trump and NAR have aligned because of the way that they cause interesting other alliances to form. Well,
and somebody like Trump, who's distinctly not Christian,
I've heard he's the most Christian ever.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, it's amazing to me. I was just looking at the Lindell text, which, if I read them, would take about 30 minutes, with the mentions of God and Mark Meadows being on the front line. But it seems like and in the book, I sort of put it this way: it's like there's this overheated fire of Christian prayer and internet insanity. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have somebody who would pay a sex worker $130,000 as the leader of the movement is pretty interesting to me. Or somebody who says, grab him by the pussy, which I don't remember ever reading in any of the Gospels.
Yeah.
So I think
that was not in any of them.
Right. That's something that I hope that we got across at least the baseline of the NAR, Mountains Dominionism, and the funding lines. I feel like I've failed a little bit because there's so much to talk about. Yeah. And I just want to make sure people understand the seriousness of this. And that when you have that many people who believe that the supernatural trumps any type of facts-based insights, I think we're in real trouble as a country going forward. For sure. And I think we made that pretty clear, again, with the caveat that this stuff is, again, NAR may be relatively new, but what it plays upon, what it taps into, are obviously millennia old. Like, you have to find just a very specific way to talk about this, and which is why we tried to train the focus on them and their beliefs, specifically, because now, again, as we are teasing out in real time, coming back next week, we'll see some of those believers in their own words, right? That's right. In their own words. And I think I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of the individuals that are involved and try to be more. I had so much, as you know, when you told me about this, or I told you to look into this, I had so much here. I actually believe you could do a whole season on Discovery Channel of everything that I've, written and things like that. But I only know probably 30 to 40% of some of the really in-depth researchers on this topic. I think too, as we go forward as a people, I think it's really important to understand that we still need to treat people with respect, regardless of their religious beliefs. My problem is that in a quarter century or less, because it's 2023, but the NAR has been around a while, and you're going back to 2016 to 2018 when the laying on of hands of Trump and all that. In less than a quarter century, we're seeing this bizarre rise of militant Christianity. Yeah, that's really from some self-proclaimed goofball who says he's a frapping prophet. Yeah. And I think, and I know that I piss people off when I say this type of stuff, but for the love of God, you can, if we have a bunch of prophets out there and any prophet can win based on the amount of financing he has, that should terrify people. So that's, the prosperity gospel is about taking money out of other people's pockets. And the NAR is about power over the love of Christ. Yes. And if they don't like it, right, I don't give a rat's ass because I'm right here. And
hey, Denver. Hey, Matt. Hey, Oswald.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Doug. I'm good.
Good. First and foremost, to speak to your earlier question, my rollerball team was the Kansas City Prophets. But the money in NAR is weaponized against normalcy, right? Like, we didn't really get into enough of the well, I guess we kind of did, right? Like the financing and where that cash is going. right?
Right. And I said some things that it was really hard to explain all of the groups that are actually funneling money back and forth. But the thing is that money is all coming from a massive donation set, whether from churches, right, nonprofits, from PACs. It's an amazing financial, I would say, an intertwined financial institution that is really well ahead of any other organizational push that the GOP has right now.
It's amazing because they seem to be at war with the idea that the country's sort of founded on, right, which is the plurality of religion.
They hate that expressly.
Absolutely hate that, right?
And are not shy about it. Like, that's the other thing. Like, again, when I said earlier that like they have a lot of audacity to them, it is that they are not necessarily shy about putting themselves out front about the things that a lot of people hold as, great traits of this country, as they are being actively opposed to. So that's one specifically that they are Christian nationalists through and through. They see that in the world through that lens. Well,
they publicly said they're against the separation of church and state, that the founders never, our forefathers never thought that was something we should do. The second thing too.
Sure, they put that in a Bible translation.
It could be in the Passion Translation, right?
Yeah.
The other thing about these individuals is when you talk about no separation of church and state, now you're getting to the point where they're self-identifying as Christian nationalists like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
So, Doug, your question is well-founded, is that we now have policy based completely on fantasy and fundraising based on the words of a living prophet, Mr. C. Peter.
Well, and it might not even be his words. Let's clarify. He is not like, you can be a prophet. Doug can be a prophet. I can be a prophet. Like,
right. Like Oprah and the keys to the car. Like, we can look under our seats and become a prophet.
And according to NAR, Oprah, Antichrist.
Probably.
They actually identified her specifically.
So is Tom Hanks, and so and so is Bill Gates, right? The other thing too, it just seems like there's an overarching arrogance through ignorance that's very hard to penetrate. And I think
underline that, please. Arrogance through ignorance, because that is like everything that I saw about them. That is the arrogance that like, Jesus wasn't all that. Scriptures, who needs them? Like, just dream about the Bible. I mean, like, that's what that is, right? That is just that is arrogance, and it is actively telling you not. So, like, if you were to be a biblical scholar, they're telling you that doesn't matter. You don't need to be a biblical scholar. Like, they're trying to make sure that any kind of expertise is pushed out under the guise of democratizing the thing, right? Making
right. It's like, to play on your point earlier. It's like, why read the Bible when you could be the Bible?
Exactly. Right.
Right.
Like,
so,
and that's the insidious part, though, is because it does sound empowering.
Right.
And that's how how the whole idea of the church growth movement, that's their entry point, right? They are going to make it sound like they're all the cool pastors. They all talk to you with their chairs turned backwards and like, want to rap about Jesus, right? Like that's their style. But really what they want to do is completely dominate you with it.
We've always sort of been infected. And again, we don't mean any disrespect to actual Christians, both of you. But we've always been sort of infected with this aggressive Christianity on normal American life, right?
Yeah.
Like "In God We Trust" is not on our currency until 1955.
Yep.
Well, it's just adding, right? It's a Pledge of Allegiance, right? And
and out of fear of communists, not out of
that's right. Well,
right, but it's one God. It's not all gods, right? So it's like,
it seems like the NAR is, I don't read the Bible reads me.
Right.
And so
I don't read the Bible. I am the Bible. Like,
right.
It is
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty intense in that sense. Yeah.
It is intense. And, when you talk about what happened to me personally, not just family, but what happened on the campaign trail after the wedding, and then me being part of the J6 committee, and then looking at the text and looking at the communications and what people were saying, it can be, overwhelming, but it's also a real hit to what you thought your life foundations were going to be. when you were told that you're in a religion that only you can be saved.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I fought with for a long time. That I'm not going to be going to heaven with my whole family sealed to her, and my kids, and that there's a basic brutality to life that I think that people try to run away from. And if you can hold on to some spiritual Mecca that's up somewhere in the sky or in some other dimension, or maybe like the Seekers is a combination of aliens and God.
Yeah.
I envy them in a way. And I know everybody's like, God, why would you envy them, Den? But my Lord, can you imagine thinking that just through grace, not even through works, and that faith that you're creating a kingdom kingdom of heaven on earth, but that you get to just go directly to heaven and you get to pass go and you get to collect $200. And people like me, who's trying so hard to fight for just some kind of facts-based, truth-based way of looking at the world, right? You just get your freaking face ripped off because obviously Jesus isn't in your corner. And I tell you what, it engenders some anger. So anyway, I'm not trying to be a downer. I just think that this has been very important to me. And I think when you're looking at the New Apostolic Reformation, I find them to be grotesque. Yeah. That's just me, though.
Well, the IHOP for a moment, if we can talk about that clip for a second. I was both impressed and disturbed by how diverse it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more like a screaming mayonnaise ruckus is what I sort of expected, right?
We're not talking about Trump anymore.
Right. It was very underneath that band that was playing like Underwater Coldplay or whatever that was. Like it was a lot of diversity in that.
There was. Yeah.
There was. And also, if you think about, I don't know, what time was that you clicked onto that, Doug, when you were looking at the IHOP?
Ooh, I don't remember. Do you?
It was completely random. What was it? It was
9 o'clock. 9
o'clock at night. Okay. So random. So IHOP. And I think that again, and then I'm thinking, I don't hold that against them. If they want to pray for college campuses, that's great.
Sure.
I think, I think though that I've been uniquely sensitized. Maybe I've hit too many nerve endings about sort of this militant Christian nationalism strain. And it's so funny. It's like Denver's calling people Christian nationalists. No, they are calling themselves Christian nationalists.
Right. They practically have it on their merch. Yeah.
Yes. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Right. Like in all honesty, like it's in their founding. Yeah. Well, and again, I know I keep hitting upon this, but like one of the reasons why the IHOP thing, first of all, it made me laugh just because, again, it says IHOP, but this gets back to the idea of their audacity, right? Like, of course, the people that say Jesus wasn't necessarily good enough or the scripture isn't like what you should aspire to are going to, like in 1999, go, you know what I'm going to call my house of prayer? I'm going to call it IHOP. Like, that's just that I feel is indicative of their attitude, right? Like,
we're just going to co-op an existing brand. You won't know it. It's fine.
Doesn't that kind of sound like the church growth movement, right? It's going to
it does.
It's just going to grab and bring stuff in. And there's a shamelessness to it.
Right.
That is almost like, to me, it became almost all I needed to know about the movement was the idea and why it fits in so well with MAGA. Because what is MAGA if not just like this shameless, just plow ahead, who cares like whose toes you step on and actually step on those toes like 3 more times before you keep moving forward. That's kind of what I got, because there's no reason on earth otherwise to take such a well-known abbreviation of a business and just say it's yours now, other than you feel like you are 100% right.
Well, it sure sounds like a cult to me.
Right. And people, if you need to find us anywhere, we could be found at Pizza Hut at Instagram.com.
Which is prayer intensity of zoological zonal attributes honoring undulating tricksters.
I love that you went with honoring. That was great. That was great. That's a Scrabble champion right there.
Well, I know I can do. Okay. So since it's time with my dogs barking like crazy, like, I guess I could probably say
sign out. Yeah,
for sure. Come back next week, everyone, because Denver's going to dish out some Mark Meadows texts, and we're going to bring that into this discussion. So,
and we're going to treat it like a D&D game.
We should.
This was your primer course. Next week is going to be the real, like,
the dogs.
The real nonstop. And I'm going to sign off with something no one's ever said before, because this is how I do it. It's time to go make the donuts.
See you, brother. See you guys.
Peculiar. Odd, strange. Odd, strange. Lady, peculiar.
We can't let it turn like this. There's a place in Monterey, California called Lovers Point.
Yeah.
The original name was Lovers of Christ Point, but now it's become, they took out the Christ, it's Lovers Point, and it's really, Monterey is a very dark place now.
Yeah.
A lot of witchcraft and the Wiccan community has really taken over there. And we can't let that happen in Virginia. Virginia is, especially down in Roanoke, they're God-loving people.
Both of those guys.